While we get Freddie ready to present, I wanted to quickly say thank you everyone for the amount of action that has happened to date. This is incredible what we're seeing in terms of the ideas that were pitched yesterday, as well as the teams that have been formed. Just as a quick kind of like expectation of understand what's going to happen for the rest of the day. Know that after this, we're going to have the individuals that you met yesterday in those Zoom rooms that were leading the idea pitch. Those are your track leads. They will contact you to do the pulse check-ins. We're going to be essentially connecting with you for 5 minutes to see how things are going up to now, see if you need anything new, and quickly check in. And I'm going to emphasize on the word quickly, because track leads are going to have to go through many, many teams. So we're going to want to have these conversations very quick. These are not mentoring sessions. These are quick check-ins. And then later today at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to start having practice pitches. And you should be able to sign up your team for a slot in the practice pitches for your track. If you don't have that link or you don't know where to find that link, we're going to post it in the general channel, which is the main channel for announcements from the organizing team, as well as you should ask the track lead to make sure they point you in the right direction. But I'd make sure that you sign up for one practice pitch at least. We're going to have practice pitch slots both tonight, Eastern time again, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., as well as tomorrow morning, Eastern time as well.
Hi guys, can you hear me now?
We can, great.
You guys can see my screen?
We can see the Hacking Medicine slide, yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Virtual hackathon wouldn't happen without some technical difficulties. Yeah, so as Alfonso, wanted to echo his words, great job so far on what you guys have accomplished so far. Really amazed to see not only all the great ideas that are coming about, but the fact that really the vast majority of you guys have stuck all the way through, pivoting through some of the challenges, both technology-wise and learning about Slack and all that, but also amongst your teams as well. So we're just going to jump right into it and really give you some tips and pointers about how to pitch and what we expect out of you for your presentations tomorrow. Just as a reminder, the judging criteria for tomorrow is really along 4 categories. One is the impact of the problem, so how real the problem is this? What's the potential for more widespread impact? And really making sure that the solution really truly addresses that identified problem. I think some of you, as you've interacted with the MIT team, we've really helped you hone down what is exactly the problem, getting down as detailed as possible. The innovation sides focus on, what's so unique about the solution you're bringing into the table compared to what's currently existing or on the market, so to speak, to address that problem. On the implementation side, this is also very equally important criteria that we're going to use because we also want to see a plan for implementation of this idea. Essentially, what will you be doing over the next few weeks after the hackathon itself to really make this a reality, make this idea more robust, more mature, more sustainable and viable for the end user, whether it's the clinician or the patient or the hospital system to implement. Then, of course, lastly is your presentation style as well. Just very quickly here, one of the criteria there is also about your team, the diversity of backgrounds and technical expertise that and perspectives that you bring to the table. So just one quick tip is, your end slide of your presentation should essentially be your team slide where you have pictures of your team members, but then, quickly outline below that the different expertise that each of you is bringing to the table. And what's important here is to highlight not just the diversity of people that are involved with your project, but really to showcase that you are the team to execute on the idea, because that is one component of it. Just because you have a great idea, that's certainly a great start, but you also need to help provide some credibility as to why you are also the best team to execute on the idea that you came up with. So what is a pitch? A pitch is a way for you to tell a story. And your goal is really to convince the audience that the problem is one that really needs to be addressed. And so you really need to make this so that state the problem in a way that anybody can understand, even somebody that's completely not within your realm of expertise or even knows what the actual problem is, but can clearly understand why this is an important problem. The next part is that your solution is ideal. And there we really mean, how viable is it? Is it easy to implement? Or is it a very complicated structure that you need to involve multiple partners? And so really thinking about how will this solution be essentially the most viable to implement. Of course, the sustainability of the implementation as well. And that's something that our clinical partners are really going to also look at very heavily in this presentations. So the 4 pillars of a pitch are on the story that you're going to be telling. So really, portray what that story is about, especially when you're showcasing the problem. Because again, you're trying to use this as a communication tool to make sure that, again, people who are uninitiated or don't know anything about the problem can readily understand it and then jump right into your solution. But make sure you make that focus, that the story doesn't meander, but that the story is really focused on the problem at hand. And so you can transition into that. And then, make sure you prepare your presentation, give you multiple chances to do practice pitches, but then really continue to practice it because practice makes perfect. And you really only have 3 minutes. And as some of you will find out tonight, 3 minutes goes by very quickly. And then fourthly, the expertise that you bring to the table. Make sure that's highlighted throughout your presentation, especially if you're getting expertise from your mentors or from outside resources. Again, this is all to help provide credibility to your pitch. So tell us about an emotional story. What motivated you personally to solve this problem? Why are you passionate about this problem? Again, at the end of the day, humanity, we're all human beings, and humanity what binds us all together. And that's more important than the technology aspect of it, even though that's also an equally important part. Again, be very focused on your presentation. Each presentation slide should really be no more than 1 or 2 points. Don't make it too busy so that you don't people get lost. The other piece of advice here is, people either usually listen or read what's on the slide, and so you want to make sure that those two come together, and so and reinforce each other. And so you don't want people who are, if you have too busy of a slide, so that they're constantly reading it and they're not listening to a single word that you're saying. And vice versa, if there's dissonance between what you say and what's on the slide, make sure that that's in sync, because otherwise they'll spend half the time trying to figure out which one to believe or which one to listen to. So limit the complexity, keep things to single sentences. The last part is, we always say, pick a beachhead market. And that's really, talking about the implementation part. Yes, your solutions ultimately might scale to a whole number of different areas and fields, but you really need to pick an area where you're initially going to focus on, whether that's a particular hospital, a particular city, a particular department or clinic, a particular target population. Essentially, who's going to be this group that's going to beta test and help you quickly iterate your idea as you go through the development and iterate on it. Again, rehearse a lot. You'll have 3 minutes in total to present everything. And so all parts of it are equally important, especially with such a short period of time. In terms, because this is a virtual hackathons, obviously there's not gonna be any live demos, but if you have any audios and videos, make sure that all the permissions are set appropriately so they'll be able to play when we stream this across the entire tracks that you'll be in. And just a reminder, all the final presentations are happening in parallel in each of the tracks. So that'll be one way that we won't be sitting in 16 or 20 hours worth of presentations for everyone. During the Q&A, you'll have a lot of the judges, some of them with more technical expertise, some with clinical expertise, but essentially be ready to answer any questions that come about. Some people try to address this by also having backup slides as part of their presentations, which you're allowed to do, that you can easily flip through. Just that way you don't actually have to talk about it in your actual presentation, but you could address it if it comes up in the Q&A. But really demonstrate that knowledge. So as I mentioned earlier, back up everything that you're saying in terms of whether it's the problem that you're defining, bringing in again information from the experts that you've been talking to, other resources that you're using. Again, make us believe in you that you know what you're talking about, and that you can deliver on the execution. And of course, this middle advice: don't ever contradict your teammate during the Q&A. I know sometimes it's hard when you've got one person who is responding to the Q&A and then to a particular question, and then you have something else to add. It might just seem like you have not such a cohesive group or team, or that you have differences there. So one piece of advice I would give is you could split up the Q&A questions to be kind of scope based. So for example, one teammate is in charge of talking about all the technology aspect of what you just pitched, and another teammate's in charge of answering any clinical questions that come up about, or any questions about the problem space, and somebody else can take ownership over all the questions related to the implementation side of your presentation. But really make that clearly lined up so that it's not that a question comes up and then you're looking at each other trying to see who's going to pick up that question, so to speak. Because again, even there, you only have 2 minutes between the judges asking questions and then you answering them as well. So you want to make the best use of that time. So how to organize your pitch. So we tell you basically to advice is in 3 sections. Spend about 1 minute about the problem that you're looking to solve, and why it's such a big problem, why it's a meaningful problem. Remember the who, what, when, why, and where that we talked about yesterday. And then of course, some of the stakeholders that you're outlining. But really also highlight what is the current standard of care, or the current system, or the current solution that's being used to this problem, why it's inadequately solving that problem. The solution, and that transitions really well into the second section, which is a solution, which we also spent about a minute on. But really here, highlight again why the solution you're developing is so much more unique compared to what's currently existing. But really also think about what are some of the metrics that will be improved. Is it, you'll be able to see X number more patients? Is it that the capacity will be improved, efficiency will be improved? Is it a cost, savings? But really try and iron out some of those more quantifiable terms of how your solution will have an impact. And then the third part, here we write business model. Of course, it's adapted from our traditional MIT medicine events, but really here is what we've been talking about, which is the business case, the implementation aspects. So here, recommend you having a slide about, again, what are the next steps going to be? What are you going to do over the next week or the next month to, further develop the solution, further test the solution, and make it a more robust product so that it can be implemented. Here, I would also include, who are the partners you plan to engage? What are the resources you think you might need to implement to move forward? Again, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but we want to make sure that you start to think about it and start thinking about what those resources might be, what some of the hurdles you might face, and how you're de-risking all of those hurdles. So here are some examples. So here was one team who focused on increasing adherence to TB medication called tuberculosis. You can see a very effective use of clearly outlining the problem, just even in the name of their team, and a very quick one-liner about what they're trying to solve. And that's something else too. Remember yesterday we talked about everything being problem-centric, and that's the way you should really approach this presentation as well. And so the first slide that we come up with is, again, what is the problem? Why does tuberculosis TB matter? Statistics here are always good. Just make sure you don't overwhelm the slide with too many statistics. But here it's providing some quantifiable terms as to the value or the impact that you could have if you did solve this particular problem. And then here, of course, we now go into the solution aspect. Show us what you built over the weekend. If you have built something, show us some of those use cases or focus groups that you did or results from that. Anything that you show us with data about what you did this weekend to develop a solution that basically, the point of it is that you de-risk as much as possible so that we have more belief and you have more credibility in terms of the solution you're proposing about why it would work. Also talk about how does the solution work. Again, this is about as much detail as you can provide, the more credible you become in terms of why the solution might work. So if you have built code, if you have anything that you've built, simply show us that as well. The other important is to show how there's value for the solution, not just to the end user, but across all the stakeholders that are involved. And so here's still a fairly simplistic look where we're trying to figure out what's the value proposition for patients versus physicians versus the buyers, which is the common sort of the tripod within at least the US healthcare system. Of course, in this current situation, you now have other stakeholders that you have to come and you have to start incorporating too, because it's not just the patients and physicians and the buyers, but now it's also the caregivers are involved. It's also the government and regulatory aspects of it as well that you have to also incorporate. And then again, really want you guys to also highlight what's so unique about your solution. Why is there a bigger value proposition to adopting your solution versus what's currently in the works or what's currently being used out there? Or even some of the other things that might be currently under development by other companies as well, even if they're not already on the market. And of course, we said the last slide should be your team slide. Make sure you basically outline who you are. You don't have to come up with all these titles of COO, CTO, CFO. We really just want to see, again, the diversity of backgrounds you're bringing to the table to make sure that we believe in your team to have adequately scoped the problem and have really done due diligence in terms of developing this solution. So some key tips that we always get a lot of questions is, should you have a demo? So real life demos are, especially in this case, are going to be really hard to see. But technology will always fail at some point. So if you do have real life demos, just be quite aware that you probably won't be able to accommodate, because we're trying to also make sure that the presentations go off really well. But also, if anything screws up during your demo, you don't get any extra time added onto your presentation time. So videos usually are much better. If you're able to just at least just do pictures and kind of walk through those, that's equally effective as well. I think videos should be okay, and we'll have instructions for you that as well. But again, really it's meant to, again, you only have 3 minutes. And of course, even trying to develop all of that material between now and tomorrow might also be adding to your time constraints. So I would certainly focus on use screenshots if you can, use pictures if you can, and then instead of necessarily doing a full demo per se, but at least give us enough of a picture of what you have built over the weekend. To designing effective slides, as I mentioned earlier, don't overwhelm the audience with so much information. I know you want to show off everything that you've done over the weekend, but be very judicious about every single word or sentence that you put on the slide. Just think about it this way, each word needs to be saying something to the audience or to the judges or to everyone else that's watching. And the other thing, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that the visual and the topic that's on the slide all make sense together, but that they also make sense with what you are saying. So make sure there's not any dissonance between what's on the slide, what's in the picture, and then what's what you're saying as well. So people have often asked, about putting up iPhones, pictures, and so on. So I think this is one good way to just quickly highlight. But as you can see, this is all very busy right now. It's too much unreadable text, too many visuals at the same time. So here we also encourage you to walk people through step by step. So that way we're only focused on one piece of information at a time. So an example is adding animation. So starting off with one of the screenshots instead of all three at the same time, and then walking people through each of those. And that way people know where to guide their attention to, and there's no longer a distance of where do I even start looking on the slide and what the speaker is currently talking about, and bringing that together. You can also try doing focusing as well. And that way it highlights just one particular part of the screen versus another. Lastly, we're just going to go into the submission guidelines. And again, all presentations should be done in Google Slide formats. The Google Slide presentation, the Google Slides, the final presentation submission form that you'll put together. There's detailed instructions on how to submit these via Google Slides, but the main thing is that they need to be shareable publicly and editable so that we can grab the presentations and build a master deck. The slides are due by noon Eastern time, and that will be a hard cutoff to allow us about an hour's time to make sure we have access to all the presentations, all the audio and video, if there are anything embedded, are also have the right permissions, and that we can also build the master deck slide as well. As a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes total for your pitch presentation, and we will essentially cut you off or clap you off in Hacking Medicine style after the 3 minutes are done. And then after that, we'll have 2 minutes of Q&A from the judges. And similarly, they will be cut off right at the 2 minutes and clapped off if need be as well. So the presentation submission, again, the links I think will be in the participant guidebook that we have for you. So the links will be made available there, and then we'll also share those over the Slack channels as well. And at this point, I don't know if there's any questions, Paul, that have risen from the Slack that you want me to address right now, or if everything's been addressed. Okay.
Oh, I think we have some hands that have raised that want to ask questions. Can also take questions over Slack.
Yeah. I can. Okay.
If you go to participants, yeah.
Got it. I found it. All right. So Shoban is first. Go ahead. Shoban, did you have a question?
You're muted now, Shoban.
All right, we'll go on to the next person for now. All right. Nelia.
Hi, yes, I was just wondering, is there a limit on the number of slides?
There's not a limit on the number of slides, just however many you can get through in 3 minutes. Usually we recommend somewhere between 5 and 10 slides is about appropriate number to be able to cover all the materials. And like I mentioned, you're welcome to have backup slides as well. So that's also okay. All right. Gregor?
Thanks. When will we find out what order we're going to pitch in?
So the order will be completely random, and you'll basically find out 5 minutes before you're about to present. So the way, though, the structure will go is that we'll announce the team that's going up, or that's presenting right away, and then we'll say the next team that's on deck will be such and such team. And so that way I'll give you guys a few minutes to kind of coalesce and for that. Okay. Niam is next.
Hi, I had a couple of questions, and maybe I'll just ask them all quickly. First, will we have access to this afterwards? I think a lot of us weren't able to jump on straight away. Second of all, is it a live presentation or do we record it? And third, could you open the chat so we can ask questions directly there? It might be a little bit quicker.
Yeah, so all the questions by text are going through the Slack channel, not through the chat here. That way the rest of our team can also help answer questions that I can't get to during this. So to your other questions, yes, there will be this was recorded, I believe. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, so this will go out in Slack. The recording will be available for this entire presentation. Give us like maybe half an hour once we're done, and then we'll get it out to you.
Great. Thanks, Paul. I think you had one more question, which I missed. What was that? All right, so let's go to Nimi.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to ask you that if your solution is tech heavy and you don't have a prototype yet, are you expected to sort of show some kind of workflow, the technical workflow of how will you build the platform?
As I would certainly encourage it, whether it's a backend workflow, whether it's what's a mockup would look like, how you envision this conceptually being worked out, essentially as much detail as you can, even if you haven't built something, but how what components would be going into that would be helpful. Again, it's all about lending credibility to why the solution you're proposing will actually work, right?
All right, thank you.
All right. Bala?
Hi, maybe you talked about this. I came a little late. So the presentation, so all the team members would present or just one representative?
So multiple people can present, though we recommend usually to keep that limited because we're not, every time you transition to somebody new, you always lose a few seconds. And so I think just be mindful of that. But otherwise, more than one person is able to present. Oh, now it triggered me. The other question was by Niam, is that the presentations are all live. They won't be, you won't pre-record these. All right, Venkat. Venkat?
Yeah.
Looks like you're muted.
Hello.
Ah, there we go. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, if see a few of us are working on desktop applications and iPad applications, and if that doesn't fit into the screen, can we make it into multiple slides?
Yeah, so you can always do. You can certainly show on multiple slides if you're. But like you said, do screenshots and then stitch them together as well.
During Q&A, can we show the working of our prototype as a back video?
Let's see that. I don't know how feasible it will be. Let our team figure that out and see how feasible that is. But I think at this point, again, try to simplify as much as possible, embedded inside of your presentation what you can. That should be it.
Thank you.
Olivia?
Hi. I was wondering how the practice pitches will work. Will we be able to sit and listen to other people pitch? And will the Zoom just be kept open for us to do that?
So practice pitches are meant to be closed between the hacking team and the MIT organizing team and some of the mentors. It's really meant to be an open forum so that way there can be an open discussion. And so it won't be open to the rest of the participants.
Okay, and will we get feedback during these presentations?
Yep, so you'll get a total of, so you'll get 3 minutes to present. Tonight, we'll let you go all the way until 5 minutes, just because we know you guys haven't had a lot of time to rehearse your presentations. And then the remaining 5 minutes will be us giving you feedback as well. And some of it will be verbal feedback. We'll do our best to also provide some written feedback as well. All right, Davis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so for the practice pitches, you guys have had the problem for a while now, I think, that for some people that the Google Docs or the Google spreadsheets aren't, you can't edit them when you go in because there's such heavy traffic. I'm personally having that problem on the practice pitch feedback sign up. Is that the right area to go to, or should I just wait? Because I've refreshed my page and I've had multiple other people on my team refresh their page and we still can't edit anything.
Yeah, I would continue to try. Otherwise, coordinate with who your track lead is, essentially the person from our team that's in charge of your track, and try to work with them about getting yourself signed up.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Let's see, Olivia.
No, I already asked my question.
You already asked. Okay. All right. Okay, let's see who's next here. Here.
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hello. Hi. Sorry. I had a question. So, can we do the introduction to the problem and the solution using like a demo video, because we spent a lot of time and we have kind of a working model. So, do you think that would be a good idea?
Yeah, you can certainly include a demo video. I wouldn't just have the whole thing be a video. We obviously want you to do a live presentation, but to highlight your product, you can certainly do video. Just make sure, I would say that, and we'll check this after you submit as well, that the permissions are set correctly. Usually we recommend that you upload the video to something like YouTube or Vimeo or whatnot. Just make it unlisted and private, but just so that we can have the permissions to it. The other is just, I know a lot of people spend a lot of time in videos to highlight what's their product, but try to keep it succinct as well. We don't want to see, we don't want half of the presentation to just be a video.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Anam.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to, I have two questions. One, will we be only presenting in our track, and will we be only able to hear people present in our track, or can we hear presentations in different tracks too? And secondly, I wanted to ask, if you're asking for presentations, will you be sharing the screen, or will we have access to like move around on our screen? Will we have remote access to the screen if you'll be sharing the screen? How will that work?
So I think the way we're gonna do this is that a master slide deck will be made by us. So we'll be hosting all of the screen, and I think what we can do is share remote control of the screen. And so you'll be able to advance the slides on your own through that. If that doesn't work, you'll just have to just say next, and one of our team members will advance the slides forward. But that way they'll minimize the potential technology failures. Did I answer your question?
The first question was, will we be only presenting in our own track?
Oh, You'll be presenting only in your own track, and you'll be listening only onto your own track. So there'll be separate Zoom rooms or webinars for all of these, for each of the tracks. And I believe we are recording the presentations, so we'll see what we can do about making them available to the participants afterwards.
Okay, okay, thanks.
All right. And we have the same.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
So, we have a problem. So originally I was in track E, and then I advertised my problem pitch in general, and people from all different tracks have now joined our team, and we created a really good team. We went through all the stages, and we're excited to continue. But right now, since the beginning, based on the nature of the problem that we coordinated, it belongs to track A. So I have registered all the forms in track A. So, but right now, I don't see we have been assigned any practice pitch. So I'm assuming it is perhaps due to the confusion of changing tracks. Could you
So
please?
practice pitches are not assigned. People self-sign up on the practice pitch. So we don't assign practice pitches. In terms of your final track assignments, why don't you send a message to myself and Alfonso, and we can coordinate that offline about the
Okay. Yeah, I have. So I guess we'll talk after the call.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Srijan is next.
Yeah, and I'm just going to cut in here. If all of the participants could just, if you have like an individual question, please direct that to Slack, and any more general questions that might apply to others as well, please use the time here to ask those questions. Yeah. Thank you.
And of course, let's keep it to the final presentation and anything that I went over in the presentation.
Actually, I had two things to ask. One thing was actually regarding the practice pitches, which we have been trying to register for long, but we couldn't because of maybe the traffic. So, like, has the registration already been completed regarding the practice pitches? And second thing, regarding the presentation submission, regarding the rules, will you be providing all the rules in written format in the Slack chat or not?
So we will share with you the submission form for the final presentations. In there, it includes all the directions in terms of how to open up the access to your Google Slides and so on. So all of that will be there. In terms of the sign up for practice pitches, as I mentioned earlier, if you can't get on, coordinate with your individual track leads. That's the team member from the organizing team that's in charge of your tracks. It's probably the person who was doing your problem pitching last night and who has been the primary source of information for the hackathon for your individual tracks.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Vanessa.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
For the practice pitch slots, is there a time for Sunday morning or are they all Saturdays?
So there's, it's for Saturday and Sunday. So there's a second tab that says Sunday at the bottom that you can find all the Sunday morning ones. And those are from 8:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Thank you.
All right, Pralinka.
I have a question about the recordings. Do we intend to keep these internal within this group, or is there a possibility that this may be available publicly?
I think we will try to keep it within the group, but if we do end up sharing the final recordings, I don't think we have plans to release it publicly.
But just to be clear here, Freddie, I'll jump in. These could all become available publicly. That is entirely possible. And just, with the code of conduct of the event and the licensing, just know that everything could wind up getting shared because as we share them with participants, they can certainly get out.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Next is we have May Neilbong.
Yes, I had a question. My team has changed significantly since I registered last night. So do we need to update who's on the team now, or can we still do that?
Yeah, so just simply, you should be able to edit your, well, if you submitted last night, you might not be able to. Essentially just resubmit the team registration form with the updated information.
Okay.
And then if there continues to be updated, we've turned on the function now that you should be able to go back to the same form submission you submitted and be able to edit it
Just
yourself.
redo it. All right, thank you.
All right, and Niam, did you have another question?
Hi, yeah, will we have a channel purely for pitches? And where will this recording go afterwards?
What was that first part again? Well, sorry.
Do we have a channel specifically for pitches? I feel like we're going to have lots of questions and that might plug up all the other channels. Will we have a channel dedicated for pitches? And where will this recording be circulated afterwards?
So for practice pitches or the final presentations?
This presentation right now.
Oh, this presentation right now, that will be recorded, that is being recorded, and as Paul mentioned, it'll be shared within the next 30 to 60 minutes to the rest of the participants across the Slack channels.
And what we're going to do also to make sure that the recording from yesterday's kickoff, as well as this recording and other recordings that might be useful, we're going to post them on the participant guide as well as a new section. Okay, and to your second question as to where these will be circulated, there's no intention of circulating these publicly at the moment, but what Paul mentioned was that we're not controlling what the audience of participants that are receiving these recordings can do with these recordings. So there is a real possibility that these could get posted somewhere else.
Okay, that's great. I unfortunately didn't get the first half of this session, so it'd be great to have a look at it later. But would it be possible to just have a pitch only channel? Because I'm certainly imagining that we're going to have millions of questions that's going to kind of go everywhere else. Is it possible to just have one dedicated channel for pitch related questions?
Yeah,
sure,
we can do that.
Yep.
It's a good suggestion.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and then Agali is next.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So I've got a couple questions. What is the level needed before or by the time we pitch? And then, or I'll let you go ahead and answer that first.
Can you, I didn't catch the first part.
So what's the level of completeness that is needed by the time of pitching?
For practice pitching?
Or
you mean final?
Yes, and the actual pitch.
So for practice pitches, it's okay if you don't have any slides put together. We just want to, again, be another touch point to see where you are, how you're doing, and then try to really, essentially it's a bit of a forcing function, especially because then it still gives you another, 12 to 15 hours to continue to really move in the direction you need to. In terms of the final presentations, I mean, do the best you can. We certainly encourage everyone to present and pitch what they've accomplished over the weekend. Nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be completely done. So I wouldn't worry too much about that aspect.
Okay. And then my second question, let's see. How do we go about finding users and stakeholders, like technical aspects? I think just
so that the two areas would be, one is the mentors that we have coming in throughout the weekend. So you can use the mentor request mechanism that we have. The other is that we do have a large number of partners that are involved with this, as was mentioned yesterday. Each of the partners have their own dedicated channel where their people are in, so feel free to pop into those channels to find them and ask questions.
Is there a way to find their channels, or do you just go to the participants all and kind of figure it out from there?
So they're all prefaced by partners and then hyphen and then the name of their organization. So you should be able to find them that way. And then there's also all the technology-based entities, especially the ones that are providing platforms and data and so on, also have, that's prefaced by tech hyphen and then the name of their entity.
And then my last question was kind of related to whether we needed to have a completed presentation of the product, or could present a roadmap to the product. But I think you kind of answered that.
Yep. All right. Next we have Daniel.
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I have a quick question for the judges for each track. Is there a way that we can get access to their bios just to get like the backgrounds of the people we are presenting to?
So you won't know the judges until the final presentation time, but just know that the judges are going to represent the same diversity of stakeholders that we talked about throughout this whole weekend, even, in the terms of the participants that are part of the event this weekend, but essentially we should expect diversity across that. And that we're trying to do our best to get clinicians, engineers, technical people, business people, entrepreneurs, and so on. So I would say present like you would present to a broad audience.
Okay, but we'll have time during the Q&A to clarify any technical points if people have questions.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like that. Oh, we have one more question. Augury, did you have another question?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Oh,
that might
okay.
be a mistake if my hand is still up. No, thank you.
All right, I think that is all the questions. Thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar. We'll make this available soon. If you have any additional questions, we'll be creating some of these extra channels as well, to particularly to the pitch versus other topics. That way we can better manage all the incoming questions that are coming. Alfonso, Paul, did you guys have anything else to add?
That's it. Looking forward to seeing these pitches.
Oh yeah. So now, as of like in the next 5 minutes, the teams are going to start going and doing the check-ins. Depending on your track, you're going to have different people, as well as the requests related to channels. We've started creating those. We're going to post the recordings as soon as we have those available. And pay attention to the general channel, which is the one we're using to communicate with you guys with hackathon-wide announcements.
Thanks, everybody.
Alrighty, thanks. Bye now.